What's good testing? Formative assessment. Assessment that doesn't create panic attacks and raise levels of anxiety to the point where people can't function, that paralyses people, that stops them reading the books because they can't be bothered to fill in the flipping book report. I hate filling book reports.
But then, I mean, that system didn't emerge by accident. There must have been a reason for doing that. And I'm guessing it's something to do with motivation. Some kids don't like reading, and if it is seen as being good for them, and making them write a review makes them do it more, then
they'll resent it, though. And I think that at a young age, putting resentment into learning is dangerous.
But by the same token, I totally agree, of course. If it is believed that just by reading 20 books, it will have a demonstrable impact on their abilities or understanding, thinking, whatever it is, and the goal is simply to make them read those books to get that positive effect. If by having the book review you make them do that reading, then that's the positive effect. And if by relying on their motivation they don't actually do any reading at all, then you're not going to get that effect. So quite possibly the kids who like reading are going to be reading anyway, and so although they might be a little demotivated by the review they have to write, they'll still be reading outside. Maybe that's simply to catch the ones who aren't interested in reading, or aren't getting reading at home, just forcing them to do something.
I would
to
say
get the benefits.
just put something interesting and interesting in the first place. The interest, if you have the interest. And I think testing kills interest.
But finding things which are interesting to all the children, I think, is a challenge. What I sometimes do in class is I'll do the assessment when they don't know they're being assessed. So I might say, okay, we're going to do this assessment next week, let's have a little practice. So they're all relaxed, they're doing it more naturally. And I'll actually surreptitiously do the assessment there, so I'll be making the notes and things. And the following week, when they think they're being assessed, I'll just take it as a kind of confirmation or something like that. But I mean, that's okay if you're talking about interactive testing of speaking and spoken interaction. But other tests aren't like that. I mean, if you're doing a test to see if they are able to do the grammar you've taught them, something we tend not to do so much anymore, but it happens, you know, it happens in our courses.
It happens in our courses a lot.
Yeah. How do you do that without it's a test, you have to think now, and they get it wrong because they're nervous? How do you take the fear out of that?
With my secondary students, I do give them at the start of every lesson a short review test that I don't collect the marks on. I don't. I let them check it together afterwards. It's basically a piece of paper, but it's got the word test at the top. And we've had so many of these, and I treat them so lightly. Now I can walk up and down and look over their shoulders while they're doing it. And they don't really care because it's sort of a light thing. And I won't check, just revision, grammar revision, language revision of what we did.
I've started experimenting with that as well. As well as teaching the British Council, I teach in a local university. And it's interesting to see the degree that the students in the university, they're much more enthusiastic about passing the test than they are about the learning process which the test is supposed to demonstrate.
Yes.
And I have to be very careful. They're not cheats, they're lovely, they're really nice, and a lot of them really want to learn, but they are so exam focused that has to be their priority. And so I'm experimenting, I'm trying to do a bit of learner training around, I suppose, formative assessment by talking about tests. So I'll make a test, I'll give it to them, and I'll say, right, this is a test, but you can't pass, you can't fail, I'm not going to look at them. This is a test for you. It's a way for you to test your own knowledge, and you can work out whether, based on your results here and how easy you find it, you can work out what you need to focus on more.
I haven't got my glasses. I'll hand out the test paper. We'll all do it individually. We'll have 5 minutes checking together. Everybody checks together. And then, after this, the feedback is, I will say a person's name very seriously. The person will stand up and give the answer. No conferring. If the answer is incorrect, the whole team stand up. Now, it sounds very harsh, but it sure makes them check together in the 5 minutes checking time, because they want to make sure no one lets the side down. So everybody really works together, and the true purpose of this is not them giving the right or wrong answer at the end. The true purpose, very similar to your assessment that wasn't an assessment, your trick assessment, is the 5 minutes conferring. That's the bit where they learn stuff. That's the bit that matters. That's the communicative bit. The bit at the end, it looks like the point, but it's not the true point.
But is it that they're actually working together and developing their linguistic ability in a collaborative, highly motivated context?
If you make sure they speak in English,
Well,
because otherwise the temptation is to go
yes.
into L1 big time. If you keep it in,
well, then
in L2,
interestingly,
then
it becomes a task. And actually,
yes, it does.
But it's quite an authentic task.
Yes, it is.
That's what we would probably do as native speakers in that context.
You've got
as
a
well.
time limit. You've got to make sure that everybody's. Have you got that? Yes. What about this?
Communicative imperative.
Yes. My students also do close tests for each other. And the funny thing is here, when they've got their text that we've just done some work on, and their little white-out Tipex, and they take out the words, and I say, you take out 10 words, and then they hand it to another team. They fill in the missing words, and then hand them back. And the joy when somebody else gets it wrong, look, because there's so much personal investment in this.
I always used to think, partly there was a massive demotivating factor, and I doubted myself if I got a low grade. But also partly I kept on thinking, I don't feel, I feel like I can do better than this, but I don't know why I'm getting these grades. I don't know what I have to do to get more. So I needed help in just learning how to play the game. So quite a lot of what I make a point of helping the students to understand how the game of the exam we're focusing on is played.
I do that. There's definitely, when we are practicing for the HKDSE, definitely looking interested, nodding in what somebody's saying. Really?
The eye contact where you move from this person to this person.
I think it really makes a difference how the children are taught, and they're not just taught to pass the test, because it's terribly demotivating.
Well, that brings us on to things like teaching to the test.
Yes, it does.
And that's a bit of a minefield, really.
It is. Good luck.
I think teaching to the test is a bad thing if the test is not good. So if you were going to devise a test to see if our lessons are successful and the students had learned something, you'd have to have communication as a key component of the test.
Yes.
If you had learning 20 words and doing a couple of gap fills, then the test wouldn't be relevant to what we were trying to do in class. If you had a test of communicative ability, productive ability in a range of contexts, then that would be a good test, and teaching to that test would be fine. Up to the end of my university life, my exam results were rubbish. My university degree is
You're
poor.
joking?
No, I was very bad at school.
Why?
Because everything was boring. My single biggest
Were you
memory
cool?
of school...
No,
I was extremely uncool. The thing I remember most about school was yawning and actually having tears running down my face because I was so bored of it.
But I always performed very well in exams, and it didn't really reflect how I was. My teacher was like, oh, she's just so lazy. And then at the end of the year, I loved the shock on their faces when I passed the test.
I didn't really get to see that very much because I didn't really pass many of the tests. No, I was always 30th out of 31. I mean, it was a grammar school and there was...
Dude, that's amazing, because you know so much stuff. He knows a lot of stuff. He's just done his MA, you know.